Good day to all. We welcome you all once again for the Café Scientifique 9.0. We have this session on one of the most interesting topics. We have this on the luxury industry and the growing influence of the non-fungible tokens. And for this, we have invited Professor Dr. Dirk Boll from Christies, the president of Christies. And I assume that this is going to be one of the very interesting sessions. So we welcome you, Professor Dr. Dirk Boll. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So before we begin the session down, if there is something that I would love to ask you. One of the things is that Christies is one of the organizations which has been there since the 1800s.
1766.
1766. Now, if it's from 1766, how has this been for the past 300 years? It's been relevant, it's been creating this value-added brand. How do you see this?
Well, it's a combination. It is a very strong sense of corporate value and expertise, and this is what our founder, James Christie, started with. He invented art auction. So the auctioneering process was around since Roman times, Greek times, but he specialized in art. And within that field he specialized. He understood that he needed to have specialism in collecting fields and in departments. And this is what he set up early on. And specialism, expertise to understand what is valuable, what is original, what is collected, what is in demand, is at the core of our company, and at the same time that's combined with innovation, with globalization, with digitization, and the combination of both, I would say, kept us afloat over these centuries.
So you have mentioned me stating this, that it started up in the 1700s, late 1700s. At that time, how did you project this? Because at that time definitely art had a lot of value. 200 years later, the concepts are changing, globalization, evolution, all these changes are coming inside. How did this, during these transformations, how did Christie's also change with time?
Well, Christie's understood that art has eternal value, but it is artistic value that creates financial value or trading value. So globalization meant in our industry that the group of institutions and art critics and collectors who are maintaining the canonization process has changed. And what used to be at least in the second half of the 20th century, an Anglo-American game of Anglo-American institutions has become a global game. And this is reflected in our office. So the market has been quicker than institutions offering, for example, Middle Eastern art or Asian contemporary art to reflect the change in taste of the client base of people who are allowed and are, allowed in the sense of no iron curtain anymore, collecting and buying art in the West.
But then did you, during the 1700s when the idea of art was something which was to be started up as auctioning, at that time, was it restricted to only a regional level? And did you expand further down stating, accepting the different values of art which is around?
Actually not. It is very surprising to read the first auction catalogue of the first Christie's auction, 5th of December 1766, that it covers almost every single collecting field we are covering nowadays. So you find paintings in there. Nowadays we differentiate between contemporary painting and historic painting, old master paintings. But you had 18th century and older paintings in that auction. You had fine furnishings, you had carpets, you had historic textiles, you had wine, you had silver, you had porcelain. So in a way there was a wide range of collecting fields covered. Some of them are a little bit less in fashion nowadays, for example silver, porcelain, textiles, and others have been added to it, like NFTs mentioned by you earlier.
I think we were just having a conversation on NFTs, because NFTs is something we all have had a discussion in the class, and Rudolph is one person who's actually explained me quite a lot on NFTs and the games. But then as we proceed ahead, I would like to also know a little more out of the curiosity that what are the different range of products that Christie's has been auctioning, and has it changed from the 1700s to 2020?
Not massively. The portion of the turnover assigned to a collecting field has changed massively. So in the 20th century, the biggest departments, the largest departments with the highest turnovers were old masters and decorative arts. Towards the end of the 20th century, it was artworks created post 1945. And nowadays we have a cluster that's called 20th and 21st century art, and this is by far the largest department we have, carrying about 70, 72, 74% of the Christie's turnover. So that means fine art created in the 20th and 21st century is what nowadays markets want.
I think if that is the thing, how did Dirk enter inside this industry? Because like, how was your association with Christie's that came inside from Christie's as a brand, and you getting associated with the brand and the change that's come in the industry after you taking over?
In a very old-fashioned way. So I was trained as a lawyer and did a postgraduate study in art management, and I entered as an intern. So I started in 1997 as an intern in a department that was then called contemporary art, and was covering maybe 5% of our turnovers. And I was then taken on, payrolled, so to speak, and was sent to Germany, running a German office, then to Switzerland, running the Swiss company, and then I went back to London 11 years ago, first running the European non-selling offices, then the European offices, and now I'm a chairman of the 20th and 21st century art department. So in a way it has been a natural career within the group, but then my jobs at Christie's have been very different, each from each other. So I always found a new challenge, I always found a new place to learn, and that kept me with the brand.
And what have been certain very rememberable, remarkable initiatives that you have brought inside after you had taken over, that like this is one of the big transition change which I actually introduced inside, like the NFT which we spoke about, so we can talk about NFT down because we could have a better view about what is NFT. But then what is it that you recollect that few of the transitions that I introduced inside the industry have transformed?
Yeah, you know, at Christie's we are very team focused. So we are not believing in rainmakers. So we are focusing on creating teams that are complementary. The members are complementary. We are spending a lot of time putting together teams, no matter whether you think of a department, a pitching team, whatever, a regional team. So I would say the value of the management at Christie's lies in the quality of the teams. And we are, I would say, the place in the industry where you see the biggest longevity in stay. So we have the lowest turnover rate, which is related to our ownership situation, which is related to maybe our corporate values, I would hope. So apparently our staff likes staying with Christie's, and that's a big difference to competitors where you see a lot of turnover, which is fine because it gives, or it might give, good energy. At Christie's we believe in well, the strength of relationship, because it's a people's business after all.
In fact, like if there is something that I would like to put out, the Berlin School of Business Innovations, we have the business school here, and the Hamburg, we focus on the art school. We have the art school in Hamburg, and just to share you just to put this across, the art as an industry is a very beautiful industry which is there. But then like if there is something that even before we were discussing, before we were starting the session, that I put across a question was that as do you find that all the artists can make business out of the creativity? Because art, there are plenty of artists who are there, but again
obviously not. That's a clear question, clear answer. There's always much more art around than art is traded or collected, and this is because art is a language that's open to everybody. So everybody can start making art today, actually, it doesn't mean that there is a market, that people are interested in what you have to say in your work. And this is why before art comes to the market, there is a rather complex process, the said canonization, where usually institutions like museums would do a selection process and would say, this is actually really interesting, and all of that is not really interesting. So we buy that for our museum collection, or we show that in our exhibition. And this is how collectors gain interest and think about it, and sometimes want to meet the artists when they are still alive, consider buying, be it secondary market when artists do not live any longer, be it primary market, they go to the gallery that represents the artist and try to engage with the art, sometimes with the gallerist, hopefully with the artist. So it's a process, but certainly it does not mean that there is a market for every single artwork that's created.
If that is so, then I have this question down stating that what is it that values? Is it the art that creates the value? Because we discussed on this thing called as value. Is it art that is valuable, or is it the artist who is creating this value in the market? Is it because you have been auctioning? Are these products which are actually auctioned with high price because of the artwork, or is it because of the artist, the brand name of the artist, or is it because of the creating the demand and the idea of the business strategy behind the auction house? So we can divide this into three: the art, the artist, or the auction house. What is it that's creating the value for the product?
Well, I think we have to differentiate here between the primary and the secondary market. So when we look at the primary market, so the marketplace that is the first marketplace for art that leaves the studio, here we speak about the artistic value and the recognition of the artistic value. And there are clear criteria out there. But of course, the personality of the artist plays into that as well, because people are interested in the people behind the art. So you can have very interesting art. Sometimes artists aren't visible, sometimes they are. When they are, and when they are considered to be of interest, that plays into demand and pricing. And then you have the work of the gallery, who should be able to place artworks in good places, such as museums where they are seen, where they contextualize and kind of create further demand. Once that is over and the canonization has happened and the systems have decided that's an interesting oeuvre, then you have the auction houses who can be seen as another selection process, because they open the doors and accept some consignments or some artworks and others not. But then auction is a fairly democratic procedure. So a gallery can say, I would prefer a sale to an institution over a sale to a private collection where an item hangs in a living room and is never seen again, whilst at auction you sell to the highest bidder. So everybody who has the money can buy the work. So in a way you have these three aspects. You have the artistic quality and connected to that the personality and reputation of the artist. Then you have the primary market and the depth of supply of information, of communication around the oeuvre. And then you have, last but not least, the secondary market, which reflects demand that has been built up to that moment.
So which means you mean to say that as an auction house, you are not just auctioning, you're also understanding the strategy behind this.
We should, yes.
The strategy behind this, and at the same time you're understanding that how to create this demand and the supply, and at the same time creating the value for the product. So these are a lot of things are behind the auction house.
Yes, that is true, but it's not that the auction houses do that on their own. They do that kind of as part of an industry, and it is quite a delicate division of labor. Think of it like the automotive industry. You have the car manufacturer, you have the oil company creating the fuel, you have the municipality building the road. And that all needs to come together to be able to sell a car, because without fuel and without a road, there wouldn't be a market. It's the same here.
That's nice to know across. But if there is something which, out of a very curious thing that I would love to know more, how does this luxury tag come inside this? Because if you notice, we are discussing on the luxury products, and luxury is one of the very, that luxury is a tag which is created out of rareness. And any product which is available to all, that is not a product which holds the luxury tag anymore. So seeing all those things, how do you find this, that you are creating the luxury tag behind the art?
Yeah, I think luxury is not only about rareness. Luxury is about quality, usually about craftsmanship, sometimes about precious materials. And I think this is very close to what we would call applied arts. So when you think about the product of a manufacturing process of the 18th century, say a piece of porcelain, a piece of china, a carpet, you have the same situation with a contemporary piece of contemporary manufacturing, like a Rolex watch or a diamond ring. So in a way, this industrial product is closer to historic product of the art market than it looks at first sight. Secondly, the value is of course in the brand, but the brand needs to have a content, and content comes from innovation, from execution, craftsmanship, material, putting this all together, communicating it. Marketing is important to create a demand, and nowadays it's a global demand. A good luxury producer has created a global demand, and therefore the concept behind the piece is very well comparable to, say, a Meissen piece of porcelain of the 18th century. You have Augustus the Strong, kind of a famous leader, a famous kind of tastemaker. You have a very innovative product because porcelain wasn't in Europe, was reinvented, was only available from China before. You have a kind of the supply was low, the demand was high. So everything came together. You have a logo, you have the Meissen swords. Here in Berlin you have KPM, another logo. So the principles are the same. And therefore the art markets have been able to embrace luxury products of today, although the production is very different and the primary market of these luxury products is very different, because these manufacturers are globally selling with their boutiques in duty-free zones everywhere, but they don't look after the secondary market, at least most of them don't. And so there was a niche for the art market to take over that market space.
And based on your experience, what is it that Christie's possesses that other companies, other auction house around the world have not able to be possessing this? Because what is it that's giving you the unique advantage that you have been able to hold this inside the auction house? Because you have it in the United States. I think Christie's also has different branches. Can we also know about the different branches?
Yeah, so Christie's has the expertise to understand what is a right, an authentic piece, and what is not. And that starts with the painting. Is the painting by Rembrandt or not? And it goes all the way down to the Rolex watch. Is it an authentic Rolex, or has it been manipulated? Has it been restored? Whatsoever. So it's the expertise. It's the understanding what the current collectors want to collect. And it is the client reach. It's the contact to these people to recommend things or to advise on acquisitions. And to feed back the information you gain into the central system, into the central pool, so the system learns about the change and development of taste. So that's the advantage Christie's has. And when you then think 21st century and you think about data mining, you can imagine that the larger a company is, the more staff members you have, the bigger the client base is, the more visitors you have on your website, the better your data is, and you can use it for client relationship management, so to speak. So it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So in a way, there is a development starting in 1766, and we still see contemporary additions and contemporary technology working towards a goal that was already out there for James Christie. When we speak about the Christie's branches, our global headquarters are in London, actually exactly in the neighborhood where James Christie has set up the company.
King's Cross.
King Street, yes,
King Street.
Absolutely. In St. James's, which is a traditional art trading neighborhood. So we have lots of colleagues around us, mainly in the art trade. The company then only in the post-war era branched out. So the first branch we opened was 1964 in Rome, of all places. In the 60s, we went into other European markets such as Switzerland, Germany, Spain, etc., etc. We only went in the 1970s to the US and in the 1980s to Asia. So we opened, I think in 76, our branch in New York, and in 1983 our branch in Hong Kong. Nowadays we have 59 offices across the globe, of which 8 are sale sites. So you have an auction house, you can go there and there's a preview, an auction preview, and there are auctions. All the other offices are either pop-ups, so there are rep offices and they do pop-up sales, or there are places where we do online-only sales from, or there are simple rep offices, representative offices, where our staff kind of showcases our services.
Now, you mentioned a few things in the earlier discussion, earlier question that we had an interaction. You mentioned on stating that there are a few factors which are very essential. One of the factors that you possess is innovation, the craftsmanship, and the other factors which are there along with the strategies which are involved. Now, based on all those parameters which is coming inside, do you find that today outsourcing to countries such as China and other outsourcing markets, is there any relevance in this industry? Because today most of the business operates across based on outsourcing. Do you find any relevance in the industry of art?
No, we have a different view on outsourcing because we are not producing. We are not creating something where you can say this portion of the job is best done here and the other one is best or less expensive done there, and so you have one part produced here and one there, and then you assemble it somewhere. We don't do that. On the contrary, our offerings are nowadays global. So we spoke about Asian art, we spoke about Middle Eastern art, we can speak about American post-war art, we can speak about modern British, we can speak about École de Paris, and that means that usually the greatest knowledge, but also the greatest demand is in places where these artworks were created in the first place. So for young British artists, production or modern British or old masterworks, you would look towards London. For French ébénisterie of the 18th century, you would go to Paris. For American post-war art, you go to New York. For contemporary Middle Eastern art, you go to Dubai. For Chinese art, you may well go to Hong Kong or Shanghai, where we are doing auctions, and this is where our specialist teams are located. So the outsourcing idea doesn't work for us in principle because our industry has a different structure, but also being a global company, we are where the markets are. It's not that we have kind of one central production plant and then we deal with outposts.
And how are your clients? Because since you mentioned down from the late 1700s to 2020, your clients would have changed. And how do you find the clients that have changed in the last 300 years and the age group of the clients as well? Because today the age group also matters.
Absolutely.
Today, yeah.
Well, I can confirm that all of James Christie's clients of 1766 are now dead. But we have been able to develop into other client groups. So throughout the 18th and 19th century, our clients were predominantly European nobility, European industrialists, in the second half of the 19th century, more and more American industrialists. In the 20th century, our client base got much more international, global in fact, and especially in the post-war era, you saw the arrival of the Middle Eastern client base, and after the wall came down, you saw kind of the former Eastern states, such as mainland China, participating. Nowadays, our client base is very global. Thanks to our online business, it is fairly young. So the average age has come down by 6 or 7 years within 18 months during the pandemic because we shifted towards online business. But still, there is a small number of people who are able to afford really high prices, like a price tag in the region of $10 million and more. That is still a fairly small group of people, whilst the second-hand Rolex watch is picked up all over the planet by kind of everybody through Christie's online-only sales.
And I think you also mentioned about the online business which is transforming. And we usually share this stating that there is a disruption in every business. Disruption is something that we talk across on every business, every industry we speak about. Do you find that there is a disruption which is in the art industry? Are there any new ideas of business community who are coming inside with new ideas of auctioning, which is there? The second question, attaching it with this question, which I would like to ask is, how is this online and the e-auctioning supported you?
Yeah, the online auction is kind of a fairly old concept, and of course our industry started in the late 90s to do that. When Amazon came out, essentially. It didn't work well in the beginning because people were so used to look at the original, and that was part of the concept, the aura of the original. So we started with collectibles, with luxury goods like jewelry, like watches, but it picked up really slowly, also because the event of buying it was part of the concept. It was part of what you bought. You wanted to go to the auction, you wanted to go to the preview, you wanted to try on the piece of jewelry or whatever it was. That has changed massively over the year 2020, obviously, when people couldn't go out, couldn't go to the viewing, or couldn't take part in a live auction because there weren't any, or very few only. So people then started browsing, and at the same time, the industry started to improve their digital offering and actually introduced innovation that had been available for quite a while already in other industries, like presentation, like whatever, 800% Zoom, well, the whole kind of cataloging of an artwork had changed using artificial intelligence, the videoing of items, content.
So you have artificial intelligence as well in this?
Absolutely, we use it a lot to prepare our cataloging. Yeah.
So how does it? I mean, where is the role of that cataloging in the sense to identify the consumers?
No, this is what we use as well, but this is more the marketing part, and this took off when we had to stop to work with printed ads, essentially, because when you start to do banner advertisement in the computer, the advertisement follows you rather than the other way around. It's no longer that you buy your daily paper and then you look at it and you look at the ad or not. It is that you open the website and then the website follows you through your journey.
The data.
This is where we use artificial intelligence in our client relationship management program. What a word! But much more we use it in the preparation of our cataloging of artworks. So what used to take days and weeks to find out about a historic artwork, its publication, its exhibition history, etc., takes the computer nanoseconds and it's there. And it's used a lot. It also has a shockingly precise idea about pricing. That is also interesting because the more historic data you have, you can feed into the system, the more precise the outcome is, obviously. And so what we do, we prepare all these cases, or the computer does, and then the specialist teams kind of work with that information.
And since you joined as an intern, and you've seen so much of technological changes, how have you adapted with this? Because, like, if I'm right, you had joined in 1996.
Absolutely, 1997, and I was actually one of those who would do research in the beginning in my junior job, and I was given a transparency. These large things we worked with, or the industry used to work with in the old days, and I did research in the library, and I would spend days in the library researching, say, a painting by Picasso. And that's now done with a PDF in a few minutes. So that has changed. The library is still important because it's only, I mean, the price data is only available back to 1992. So everything that's older needs to be researched, and we have a large archive. But it is much easier because the last 30 years, where the information flood has really come through, is digitized and is very accessible.
So you were able to adapt to the change which was there because you've seen the whole 25 years of change which has come inside. From a period of time when it didn't have the digitization, or like it was just the beginning of the internet, to the artificial intelligence and the NFTs which has come inside. So you have been able to completely understand and adapt to the whole industry and transform with this.
Well, I wonder whether I completely understood, but I tried my very best, yeah.
If there is another thing that we always discuss across in the current day markets of the business school is that luxury as a product. Today, luxury as a tag is something which is struggling to sell itself. It could be any brand such as Rolex, which they clearly mentioned on stating that we are not able to make a very good sales because of the advent, because of the introduction of the smart watches which has come inside. And similarly, it could be the auto sector, it could be majority of the sector because of various issues which are there associated with. How do you see this change? Do you feel that luxury as a tag will really not survive in the long run? Do you find it anywhere like this, or do you feel that luxury will ever remain? How do you find this?
Well, the honest answer is I don't know. What I can say is, in hindsight, there was always kind of a group of or a pool of topics, of collecting fields that have been of interest. And in the 18th century, it was snuff bottles, and nowadays it's sneakers. So I'm absolutely convinced that also in the 22nd century, collectors will want to collect because that's one of your instincts. The question is, what is it people will want in the future? And this is what you need to prepare for, because you need to understand where you can source it from and how the consumer would like to obtain it. But this is a structural question. This is not about will people want to buy items? Will people want to buy stuff? And maybe it's not an item; it's an NFT, and it's entirely digital on your phone. But I'm absolutely convinced that people want to collect and want to add to their collection. It's about the getting. It's not about the having, or less about the having.
And since the industry right now speaks a lot about NFT, how would you like to put this? What is NFT, and how is NFT associated with art?
Well, NFT is used by the mainly younger generation of artists to certify a digital artwork you can then sell. It's also used to create via the smart contract your legal position for the possibility of a resale, which is not the case in the analog world. In some countries, in the EU countries and the UK, there is an artist resale law, but not in America, not in the Middle East, not in Asia. So usually the artist is cut off any proceeds of the resale of their work, and you can create such a legal position by having that input into the smart contract. Thirdly, when you work as an artist group, you can use the NFT technology to define a very precise ownership that covers your contribution to the product. So in a way, I see NFT as a technology that helps young artists to promote and safeguard their work and their legal position, their ownership position, their intellectual property right. Secondly, it is a way to certify things, certify rights, certify digital art, and that is something that seems to convince very many people because digital art is very contemporary. It is kind of low threshold because everybody has a computer nowadays, but at the same time, it was until the implementation of NFT technology kind of not really well respected because there was a lack of security or trust, and NFT has closed that gap in my view.
And before I open the question for everybody, I want to ask one question about NFT, because do you find, because you mentioned stating that NFT and the young artists use that keyword. Now, how, because I'm very sure being an auction house which is having a lot of valuable works which are being auctioned, you would be having a lot of a huge number of clients who are not used to the digitization technologies. Now, do you feel that you're losing out on them because of the NFT, or do you feel that NFT is going to open a new market altogether, just adding on to them?
I would say it's the latter. Christie's was the first classic market platform to offer an NFT-based work end of February, beginning of March of last year. That's been the famous Beeple work that sold for $69.3 million. Of course, the sale was in Ether, not in dollars. And we realized that there is a large public out there. There was that famous art newspaper article that said the last 3 minutes of that auction were witnessed online by 22 million people. But at the same time, we found out there is a very small overlap to our existing client base. Now, this record price for an NFT work has, of course, kind of shaken up the system a bit, and cutting-edge contemporary collectors who are interested in the latest in artistic fashion and artistic language have now started to look into NFT and partly have started buying them. But I think the by far larger opportunity is in the tech community out there.
Have you ever been stressed during an auction?
Of course, plenty.
Because is it because of the value which needs to be to a certain threshold level, or how is that?
Well, it's the value, it's orchestrating the bids, it's understanding what the market wants, and the market is in the room or comes in through internet bidding. So it is an amalgam of elements, and it's good stress, it's fun.
We can open questions on NFT because before we use the other keywords, I think NFT is one of the very interesting areas which we discussed down. Let's have a few questions. Yes, Aditya, and then Rodolphe. Yes.
Hi, my name is Aditya.
Hello.
So my question is this, that last December 2021, Christies had an auction on OpenSea, and it was not a very high income auction like you usually have. Around, what I found in my research is around 850 Ether, accounts to around $3.6 million. So do you think that the upcoming new NFT marketplaces like OpenSea threaten the traditional auction industry, or and also does Christie's have a plan to launch its own NFT marketplace?
So to begin with, an auction that is worth $3.2 million is not a small auction. So the vast majority of artworks traded on the art markets is traded below $10,000. So what forms our perception of the art market is media that reports on record prices. So therefore we all believe every artwork that's traded must be valuable and must have cost millions. It's not the case. It's the tip of the iceberg. So we do have auctions, live auctions, that are worth £1 million, £1.5 million. And these are day auctions, and they are real auctions in London in the auction house, like an estate sale, for example. So 3.2 is not bad. Secondly, the OpenSea auction was an auction curated by the Christie's team. So the selection process has been done by Christie's, and it was an OpenSea auction legally, but that also means that OpenSea was bringing their client base. And as I said earlier, our client base, our traditional client base, took a while to adapt and to really start looking at NFT products seriously and picking them up, buying them. So in a way, it is more a Christie's intellectual input and labeling, branding for an OpenSea auction. We are indeed looking into launching an own platform, but this is a bit of a slow-burning question because we realize that as soon as we have a small number of NFT works presented on our classic platform, we achieve higher prices. So the question is, how can we structure our own NFT platform to carry over the Christie's brand value and ideally parts of the Christie's client base to that new platform? we don't want to kind of create a platform and just brand it and that's that. It is the aim is to carry over the communication of expertise, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Rita?
First of all, thank you very much, Professor Boll, for such interesting lecture you've been giving us. My name is Rodolfo. I'm quite interested on an action company involving into the NFT marketplace. One of my questions was on how you see the competition with things like OpenSea or LuxRare on Solana blockchain. I was wondering, what competitive advantages Christie is bringing to the table when it comes to auctions on these blockchain platforms? And also, what's kind of the roadmap for the business model that Christie wants to implement? I think that's the most important thing. The third and last question would be if you have any thoughts on, for example, bringing Christie's own NFTs, as it's a company that's lasted over 300 years, so you have a brand to work with, and create your own NFTs. And more so, how's the business model going to work? Are you going to get some royalties under smart contract, or are you just plan to acquire NFTs and then resell them for a higher price? What's your view on that?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
By listening to the third question, I've forgotten the first.
The main question was on the business model as a whole.
What is the business model that Christie wants
the
to implement,
competitive
and what's the competitive advantage?
The differentiation between places like OpenSea and the Christie's platform is the quality and the branding of the selection process. So the art market or the collectors, the consumers pay a higher price for something because it is presented by Christie's, because they're interested in our selection process, in our expertise. And you have many comparisons to that in the analog world. Like you can buy a used Rolex watch kind of on gazillions of platforms on dirkboll.com, and it will make a lower price than when you sell it through a Christie's platform. And that has to do with the expertise, as I said, but also with warranty, with a certain trust in processes, in management control, in anti-money laundering law applied, in know your client applied, etc., etc. So to buy from Christie's might be a bit more expensive than to buy from dirkboll.com, which is not existing, but people are willing to pay a higher price for essentially the same product because they trust the brand, they trust the platform. And this is this you find in the analog world, and this is what we already see in the online-only world. So in a way, we say, by our tradition, by the way we do things, our brand has an advantage over other brands. It's also the association with art. And here we come to the next point. Christie's focuses, or that's our aim, to sell NFT works. That's a bit of an imprecise term, as we know. So we aim for sales of, or offerings of, lots where the NFT certifies a work of fine art. And that is an artistic creation, usually by definition of a living artist. There was that exception when we sold the Andy Warhol kind of floppy that was converted into an NFT. But in principle, we want to sell artistic production because that's what we do. We sell the product of artistic production. And in the NFT case, there is no historic because NFT have just been invented or used for artistic purposes. So what we don't want to do is what currently museums do. They take a historic work like the Uffizi, take a wonderful old master painting, and they create a digital copy, and then they sell the NFT product that goes alongside. This is part of the market we are actually not interested in because the artistic value is 500 years old, and you are essentially selling a digital poster. Do we want to do our own NFT product? Not at the moment, and this is for legal reasons because, as you all know, there is so far no legal connection between the NFT as a certificate and then the artistic product. So the artistic product is depending on a platform, on a third party, and we see that at least in the European Union and in the UK that legislation has started to look into that from all angles, also from the tax side, and we expect this to change at some point in the not too far future. And then also our attitude towards creating NFT and all of that might change. For the time being, we are offering NFT certified artworks essentially by living artists, and that is our little slice of the market we want to focus on, because that's our background, that's our tradition, that's where our expertise lies. The selection process, what is interesting art and what is less interesting art, and we want to offer the interesting art because this is what our client base expects from us.
Thank you very much. And just one small follow-up, just so I can get clear. So what exactly is the revenue that Christies gets from selling these NFTs? Is it a royalty that's on the smart contract, or is it just a value acquisition because you can sell it at a higher price because of the brand value that Christies brings to the table?
Our business model is commission-based. So when you sell through us, we get a commission from you as well as from the buyer. And that's not on the smart contract. It has nothing to do with the smart contract. You can, if you want to, you can have our contracts in a blockchain version if you wanted to, but it's not necessary. You can also take out your fountain pen and sign a sheet of paper, depending on taste.
Perfect. Just a good idea for Christies would be to implement a royalty fee on your contract on the blockchain, so each time the item is resold, you can still get a royalty fee.
Yeah, you know, we actually don't want that, because the problem of our markets is that there are so many layers of royalty already existing. There is VAT, there's artist resale rights. Sometimes you have an import VAT, you have customs, you have special fees for special materials or special products we are trading. So we want our services rewarded, but we don't want to add kind of automatic royalties, because we don't believe in that. At least I don't. Famous last words.
Thank you very much.
Yes, John. Yes, Rose.
I have a question. From your very personal point of view, what do you think about NFTs and how they are developing in auctions and inside of this change of the world since 2 years ago, in talking about art and modification of the way of lives inside of Christie's and auction world?
I think NFT is a great technology for very many places and services. I think in our world it is here to stay. What we haven't seen yet is the big canonization moment, the moment when the art institutions divide the world and say this is of interest and this is not. And when we think back to other breaking points in art history, like the invention of Impressionism, for example, in the 1870s, you had in Paris alone thousands of painters who would paint in that style. Nowadays, maybe 15 are collected by museums and by big collectors. And that's a development we are going to see in the NFT place as well. It won't be these extremes. It won't be 15 to 1,000. We also know that it is much more than 1,000, but it will also be much more than 15, because nowadays it's a global world, whilst in Paris in 1870 it was essentially France, England and America. But still, that selection moment will come, and many people who are collecting now, and that's also a very typical moment in the collecting life cycle, will then focus on a smaller group or a smaller part of their collecting. But that's very normal. But it's going to happen. It's going to happen in the NFT world as well.
And have other firms also started, your competitors or like new industries which are there, have they also started implementing with such new technologies of blockchain and NFTs?
All of them.
All of them?
All of them.
And in all the countries? Or like, is it only in a selected number of countries?
Well, our industry is defined by a big gap between big and small, so that essentially 4 large houses, of which 2 are in mainland China, and 2 are in the UK, or that's not true. Christies is in the UK, Sotheby's is in New York, domiciled, and then there is a large gap of I don't know, 60% in turnover and also size in staffing. And then you have a fairly large number of mid-market companies you find all over the place, be it in London, be it in Germany, be it in France, be it in America, of course, West Coast America in that case. So I would say it is a global development, a global phenomenon.
That's nice. That's very interesting to know. And at the same time, do you find that there are, because since you're also the president of EMERI, which are the countries which you find today that there's a huge economic balance which is happening down, in the sense that earlier there would have been more amount of trade which is happening, trade auctioning which is happening in one section of the world. Now, do you feel there are more sections of the world that has come in the last 200 years or 100 years?
Well, I would say it's more the last 30 years.
30 years.
And this is where you saw the global demand popping up wherever people were. Because in the old days, collectors would travel to London, Paris, New York, later Hong Kong, to look at art and to acquire art. Nowadays, you can do that from your computer at home, no matter where you are. And obviously, the difference is the biggest in places where the analog infrastructure is poor, but the digital infrastructure is good and contemporary and up to date. So like Southeast Asia, India, mainland China, some African countries.
That's very interesting, Don. And yes, please.
Hello, so I'm Adarsh.
Hi.
I'm a digital artist. So as you talked about earlier that there are young artists coming towards the NFT field, and so there are competitors of Christie's which have already launched NFT platforms to sell their art. So what have you planned for the young artist to acquire their taste for the client demands?
Well, auction houses, in principle, are the second layer of the market. So it's an exception to art history and art market history that the distribution system of an auction is used for a primary market purpose. That has never happened before. So therefore, the market has to be very careful in how we deal with the gallery system, because in the classic market, we need the gallery system to prepare artists and artwork for the secondary market. In a way, it might mean that the influence of the gallery system is going to shrink, but that is something that will pan out over time. Until now, the NFT portion of the art market is below 5%. Depending on the auction house, at Christie's it is at 2.7% or something. So despite all the prices that hit the papers, and we did a turnover of $150 million in NFT-based works last year, it is still a small portion of the market, but it is the fastest growing one, at least for the time being it has been. So there will be a big step in the development coming. The question is when.
I want to follow up with a question that Sir asked. In the NFT field, is there a difference to a recognized artist and the artwork? Is there a difference for the artist? If there is a big artist, or namely artist, then the NFT would have sold for a very good price or something. But if you are a young artist, you have just got into the NFT field, and you just launched your art in the small platform for a small price, it's not worth it. So how do the small artists get up in that field? And
yeah, to be frank, there is no difference in the medium here. When you're a young artist, you need to establish yourself, you need to promote yourself, you need the collecting crowd, but also the institutions, the curators, the museum goers, make aware of what you're doing. So, and that's the same no matter. Of course, in the online world, it is a bit easier because you can work with Instagram and you can work with all the, well, that industry is using Twitter predominantly, but the competition is big at the same time. So the issue remains how to make yourself known, and many artists are using marketing tools to do that. But again, that's not NFT specific. On the contrary, and as we know, there are so many platforms out there that are user-friendly. You can just kind of use for your purpose. That is a difference to the gatekeeping situation you find in the classic art market. So it's much easier for you to enter OpenSea than to consign your goods to a classic, for example, Christie's auction, because there's very little gatekeeping in place.
Thank you so much.
That's interesting. Yes, Ahmed. Yes, Ahmed.
Hello, sir.
Hello?
I want to ask, is it depend on the ages? Because NFT world right now, depending on the geeks of technology like Bitcoin, crypto currencies, is it affecting the buyers and the sellers by these ages? And what is the nationalities that interest in buying NFTs right nowadays? Also, I have another question. What are the styles that depend on selling? We have found like BP's pack, X copy. I don't know how to recognize their styles. What styles right now is in demand for purchase?
Well, I think the style question is very much related to the novelty character of the collecting field. So people who buy an NFT want it to be recognized as an NFT. So the more it looks like digital design, the better, I would say. That's just my personal perspective. The people who buy it, the biggest buying kind of regions are Asia and the US, but that's the same in analog art. The Americans are the biggest buying group at Christie's, and I think Asia is the second biggest. So that's mirrored in the NFT place, but this is also where this technology has taken off and is developed. And again, I forgot the first question. What was your first question?
What about the age?
The age group.
Affected by the age, yeah?
Yeah, of course, it is closely connected to the crypto community, and kind of, I don't know about your grandmothers, I don't think they own crypto. So, but your nieces might. So, of course, the openness to new business ideas and kind of the daring attitude towards crypto technology as well as cryptocurrency is the key here. So the age group is massively younger than the age group for Rembrandt or Warhol.
And to follow up, what styles also that in demand right now in the market? Because we have seen digital creators like Beeple's, X-Pack, X-Copy Pack. What is the styles in demand right now in nowadays?
Yeah, it's a style that is recognizable, that works on all kinds of screens, because that's usually how the art is presented. It's less about wall power, what the Americans in the post-war era called kind of the big canvases produced. It is interactive, because kind of static digital imagery is considered to be old-fashioned. It usually is colorful, and it has a certain, let me call it a wow effect, an overwhelming surprise effect. That's very much in demand. But as I said before, it is also about the novelty of the artistic language you want to show as a collector.
Maria, would you like to ask a question?
I was going to ask something a bit related.
Yeah.
That was a long way. Thank you very much. I guess let me see if I can formulate my question, but I wanted to ask something in this direction of how it will be defined what is fine art or what can be considered as art in the NFT world. And also who is going to define it? Because what I see right now, and I have to say I also just, it's also I think what anyone can hear, I haven't done a very deep research on it, but is that it is mostly influencers, people who are big on YouTube, on social media, defining what NFT art is.
Well, let me...
sorry.
And the third question, over which I will forget the first.
No. And basically just, and what they're showing is this kind of imagery, like the monkeys or the artists you were naming before, which to me do not at the first sight seem as the normal definition of fine art. So will that be influenced by the kind of people who are defining it at that moment? And how do you see that it might shift in that sense?
Well, I would think that the canonization process clearly is influenced by influencers, by likes, by social media, by the crowd, by the community. That's certainly the case. And that's new. That wasn't the case before. So the number of, say, museum visitors was not influencing the prices for Picasso. So, that has clearly changed. But then, let me tell you a story a friend of mine who is a fashion designer once told me. He said the whole fashion industry is looking and kind of quietly agreeing on what is the color of the season. And then you hire kind of a trend scout and kind of you speak to your peers, and then the first collection comes out and kind of the color of the season seems to be whatever, purple. And then there are companies like Hermès who do fashion but are a tiny bit behind current fashion, and they would say, oh, purple actually doesn't really work with our program. Our color of the season is navy. And then this friend says, and when you then revisit the collections of the year 5 years later, in hindsight, it turns out that miraculously navy was the color of the season, and no one knows why. And this is exactly what I expect in the NFT world, that nowadays all the influencers, all the young collectors might think, whatever, PAC is fantastic, or the Ape Club, or what you name it. And maybe in 10 years' time, it turns out that other things have been more interesting, and maybe what the MoMA has acquired turns out to be the right thing. And you can rightfully ask, is this about artistic quality? Is this about the opinion leadership of the big institutions? But then you could question the opinion leadership with the new with the new public, with the collecting crowd, with the tech crowd. Kind of who knows what MoMA is or stands for. So this is all kind of a bit in the air. My gut feeling is that the use of the criteria that has been used so far for 1,000 years of art history, also applied on that question, will be helpful. And that's what's going to happen, but it takes time. And I think in 2-3 years' time, we will look at some of these positions now. We think it's so funny and it's so fresh and looks so good. We think, oh my God, it was a bit kind of overused or less interesting or less content-rich or whatever. And something else that was more, I don't know, a commentary or an outsider position was actually more interesting. So sometimes in hindsight, it's a bit clearer. Let's see. That was a long answer to say, I don't know the answer.
Yes, Aditya, since you have the mic, yeah.
So one of the many proponents against NFTs and the use of cryptocurrencies and all is the climate activists. So, how does the auction industry, finds itself trying to be, climate neutral? Obviously, you're an industry; you have to be carbon neutral in the future. So, with going towards an NFT marketplace and all, so how does it find itself, let's say, in like the next 5 years, or according to the Paris agreement that we have to be climate neutral or carbon neutral? So how does that work out?
Yeah. So it might surprise you, but of the whole industry, Christie's so far has been the only company to commit to Paris 2030. No one else has done that. And that means that we are very worried about the kind of the carbon production done by the use of NFT technology or blockchaining. There isn't much you can do about it. We all wait for the stake change. The only thing you can do is you have to measure and you have to be transparent about it. But then again, it's 2-point-something% of our turnover, so we can. Right now, we're able to balance that by doing other things in a different way. Like we are reducing our air freight, and we are going to we are using ships to ship, which takes much longer. But needs or creates less carbon, and very many steps like that. So by now we are fine, but with an increased market share of NFT, that will be a problem, and it can only be solved by the NFT creators and by the tech industry by changing the process simply.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Hello once again. So my question goes, because we're talking about some like the Board Jet, Ape Club, and CryptoPunks. All of these are NFT projects that are based on community. So our community projects, their value is on the community, not on the artwork per se. So that's why I think we need to differentiate on that aspect, that not all NFTs are based on artwork, or they're based on their community or their smart contract value. So I was wondering if Christies is looking into doing some research on these community-based projects, or for example, things like audios in which now musicians can upload into the blockchain their music, and people can purchase directly their music instead of going through a label as Universal or all of these others.
Yeah, no, the answer is no, we are not, because we don't see that as our job, because we don't want to be participating in creating a bottleneck, and this is how we perceive it. So art is a free expression, and I don't think we should be one of the big players who kind of try to hoover up artistic talent by bringing them under our smart contracts. I don't believe in that.
My question was more towards would Christies in the future own CryptoPunks or any of these sort of projects, and then use it, see it as artwork or in their catalogs?
No.
It's strictly for fine arts that are physical artworks.
We try to avoid ownership positions at all costs, no matter what it is, no matter whether it's a Rembrandt, a Picasso, or an NFT, because we are an intermediary. We don't want to own stuff. We are selling a service. We want to earn commissions, but we don't want to earn material, and we very, very rarely take over an ownership position. Sometimes when a deal goes wrong, we have to, but it's 1 in a million cases. So no.
Thank you very much.
Yes, John, you have a question?
Yeah. Thank you. So I just have like a short question. I don't know, how sustainable do you think NFC is like going to the future? Do you think it's something that is really like sustainable?
Well, the honest answer,
to cryptocurrency, I mean.
The honest answer is I don't know, because I'm not the tech guy who's into that production, into that mining. I also hope that proof of stake will be the big leap forward we have been promised for the past 2 or 3 years. But do I know it? I don't. I can only hope for that marketing promise to be true.
Okay. Because I noticed like some cryptocurrency like Solana is kind of like incorporating the proof of stake. So I don't know, do you think it will also be like sustainable for the cryptocurrency, like going into the future?
It could
like
be.
The technology.
It could be, but normally people choose an artwork not through the blockchain or the currency involved, but by the artist or the artwork. It's like you can buy a Volkswagen and you can pay in Ether, and you can buy a Skoda and you can buy in Bitcoin. No, I mean, in this case, you might go for the one you have the money in, but or the currency you own. But normally, this is not a criteria for a collector. A collector differentiates by the product and not by the currency it's sold for.
Thank you.
Islam?
My question is regarding the traditional copyright methods and the NFTs. So is it not possible to still apply like the copyright methods on digital arts?
Yes, of course it is.
Okay, so what's the difference then? Is it like what does NFT add to?
Well, NFT adds another layer of security, because you can prove your ownership or creator's position in a very easy and safe way, unlike before.
I had this question, in fact, when the digital artist, he raised this question, I had this question down, that how do you recognize young artists? Is there any platform where a young artist can also be given the platform? Because we might tend to lose a lot of creativity, lose a lot of value-based artists who again feel that the industry has not given me what I deserve. And thereby, where do you see that, like, there has to be because the digital medium has come in, where do you see that there has to be a platform where they also have got to be recognized for young artists?
Yeah, I think the young artist is not really interested in the industry recognition, but in the collectors and institutional recognition. So the question is, what are their channels? And I would think the community uses Twitter, and artists for a communication and also sales purpose use Instagram. When you look at the figures in the Art Basel report, you see that of all social media channels, Instagram has more than double the number of transactions. So it is more than double as successful for you as a user, as an artist, to reach out to people who then indeed buy your art. So I think this is what artists are interested in. They're not really interested in the attention of an auction house. They might want to see their work represented or resold by an auction house, but essentially their focus is on the recipient rather than the structure.
That's interesting across. Yes, Bosa.
Thank you very much for coming here again, because before walking in here, I did not have too much idea about NFTs, but yeah, in the last 1 hour, I could understand one thing, that the digital arts, like the NFTs, they have more of a marketing thing, that like they are more promoted over the market, like the marketing really matters for them, otherwise, but instead of the traditional art, like if it's a Picasso, I don't need to go and brand about it, it's just a Picasso and it's there. So what do you think in the contemporary world, when the digital artists are coming up more, at the same time we also have a lot of traditional artists, contemporary traditional artists, how is their market being killed by the NFT market, to be very honest?
I think it's not a real competition, because NFT as technology is open to everybody. And what you can see in the market nowadays is there is a certain there's a higher visibility for artists who are digital artists using NFT rather than artists who have worked in the analog world adding NFT to their work. But for example, I was in Hamburg yesterday, where Tom Sachs has a large show at Deichtorhallen, a contemporary art exhibition platform, an overwhelming show of kit, of material, of stuff. And at the same time, he translates his art into NFT. You can buy. He's into the outer space. It's all about rockets. You can buy parts of rockets, and these parts are then in the computer assembled, and that's all NFT certified. And at the same time, he creates that rocket and lets it fly. And as a collector, you buy the NFT, and if the rocket comes back and can be traced, you're given the remains as well. So some existing renowned artists are embracing the theme and the technology, and are using the advantages of the technology in a very clever way. So I would assume that over time, NFT will be a support technology for the classic artist, and at the same time will help to popularize the digital art.
Thank you. And another question, like, do you feel NFT sometimes overhype the value of an art? Like, suppose this is a thing, like, but in NFT somehow, if the artist brands it and markets it really well, and it goes beyond the price of its actual price, so sometimes does that affect it?
That can happen in the analog world as well. But you're absolutely right. A lot of that benefits from the novelty character of the NFT as a label. Yes, certainly.
Thank you.
Saina, any questions? Okay. Oh, in fact, like, I think with questions coming in, I would, if there is a question that I would be interested to know. During these auctioning, sometimes art is also subjected to controversies, and those controversies also influence the prices and the impact which is there. Have you experienced any of such kinds of controversies which has come inside?
Certainly, the famous Beeple work was very controversial. It was containing kind of diary pieces of 5,000 days of his life, and some of them were very kind of confrontational, and that was discussed. But that's part of kind of perception of art. So I'm not worried about that. It's independent from technology or medium, I would say.
And how is this, how is that, since my knowledge of art is more very amateurish, how is what is modern art, and how has this transformed the whole idea of art for the existing artworks?
That I don't get, I'm afraid. What do you mean?
Modern art, as such, the talk of modern art which is there. The Western art, the Eastern art, the modern art. Now, the talk of globalization is brought inside the idea of modern art. Now, what is this modern art in the artwork?
So, modern art is an art historical period that started maybe in between 1905 and 1910 and ended, I would say, with the Second World War, and it had a deglobalizing effect in the way that what was considered to be modern was for 100 years and a bit more for 110 years considered to be non-regional. So was considered to replace regional tradition, like the Anglo-American way or thinking of modern. And you can think of modern fine art, but you can also think of Bauhaus and architecture and design, was considered to be non-regional and therefore superior to everything that is regional, that was then considered to be tribal, so to speak. And nowadays art history has overcome that idea, and modern art is seen as a Western period in art history. And has a certain meaning as such, but one has understood that the reception history was in parts wrong because it was a regional style, essentially.
There are few, since we have participants virtually as well, there are a few questions which have come inside. If I'm just taking the question of Philip. Philip has mentioned that he would like to know if, besides ownership of digital art, can the NFT be used to represent ownership of real private equity and simplify the bureaucratic process?
Theoretically, yes.
Yes.
Of course, yeah.
So, which means that like the ownership of the digital art can be, the NFT can represent the ownership.
Yeah, but no matter whether the artwork is digital or analog. And actually, Christies is offering the blockchain service since 2018. So when you buy something in real life, you go to an auction at Christies and you buy something, you can ask us for a blockchain kind of documentation of that treaty, of that contract. And we are going to deliver that via an external supplier called Artery. So it's not limited to digital art. You can use that technology for an ownership proving certificate kind of for everything you do.
That's interesting indeed. And if I may ask you, what all products have you auctioned that you could recollect right now? Art is one of that. Watches, traditional, are those also?
Watches, jewelry. Old master paintings, 19th century paintings, impressionist and modern, post-war and contemporary, carpets, fine furniture, bronze, sculpture, porcelain, silver, textiles, modern British art, Islamic art, Chinese, Japanese, Middle Eastern art, Southeast Asian art, African classic, what we used to call tribal. So we have 60 departments, 60
departments,
with experts who do sales and have expertise in these collecting fields.
And how do you have the logistics of picking this up? Because like first thing is, if there is anything which is a vintage or beauty collection which is there, you should first get to know about this. So how do you have this, how do you get to know about this, and you also determine that this is something which is authentic and this has a higher value? How do you have this logistics behind this?
People come to us and ask for our opinion, want to know whether these items, for example, they have inherited or been given or bought many years ago, are authentic and do have a resale value. And then we give our opinion. I mean, our specialist teams give their opinion on the artworks. And that's how you get to know them. People come to us asking us whether we could sell for them. For example, in an inheritance case when you have to pay inheritance tax, or when you split a collection because you get a divorce, for example. These are the cases where people come to us. And the purpose of our marketing is that people do understand that if you are in need of an auction house service, there is Christie's out there you can go to.
And have you ever experienced any kinds of, though you already mentioned one stating that we don't purchase anything, we just act as a medium of who's just passing across. Have you ever experienced a time when there was a loss because of this? A kind of a bidding which went on a financial loss because of this?
Well, the loss can only happen on the side of the vendor. When someone buys something and keeps it, and during that holding period, the demand goes down and therefore prices go down or values go down, and then they resell it, for example, because they have to. And then they make a loss. Yes, that's possible. But this is the same in real estate, for example, or shares or gold or whatever market you're in. That's the character of a market.
And we are also talking about the metaverse. Metaverse is something today everybody is discussing. And so like, do you also have similar kinds of new ideas of implementing the virtual visit to the museum? Do you also have similar ideas?
Well, so far we are not doing it ourselves, but the group Christies belongs to, that's called Caring, does that. So whatever our sister companies are producing, most of that is available in, say, Decentraland, yes.
That's nice indeed. If there are, yes, please.
It's going to go a long way again.
So as we were talking about the wow factor that you told, there should be a wow factor in art. Plus you told about the marketing, there should be marketing. But the wow factor depends on person to person. Every person defines the wow factor different. So is the art more important or the marketing of the art more important?
Well, I think marketing can only work out well if the core of it is working out. So if you're just selling rubbish, it will be rubbish no matter what you do. And when you buy very expensive advertisements, it's still rubbish you're advertising. That's my personal view.
No, but there are NFTs which I think, from my personal point of view, is not that good and selling it for a huge amount. So I think the marketing of that product has been done so good that the product is selling for a good price. So is this
fine? If you don't like the product, you shouldn't buy it. It's very simple.
Okay. Thank you.
No, that was exactly my question. Like, a product is overhyped. Like, when marketing is done so well that a product is overhyped and people buy it on a more, like, at a bigger price than it actually the value is.
Yeah. But this is something that happens everywhere all the time and has happened in our markets since 1766, I can tell you. So there are always these people out there who, as we call it, buy with their ears rather than with their eyes. So they buy what everybody tells them. Oh, you don't have this or that, you need to have it. But it's everywhere. You see it in the sneakers, in the fashion industry, you see it in art, you see it in real estate, that everybody goes to one certain neighborhood or wants to. You see it in whatever, universities even. So it's this is human society. People want to be part of the majority. People want to be part of those who are in the know, and therefore they follow trends. And the question is, how can you influence trends? But as we know, the trend moves on, and then there was quality or not. So your sneakers either last and serve the purpose or don't.
Yeah, because mostly like people buy sneakers like collector's edition. They're this big. They're not comfortable, but still they go and buy it because it's a collector's edition, and that's why I'm saying the value or the product value is like the usability is not as much as the value of the product.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Ekli, any questions? Yeah.
Going back to copyrights and ownership, what guarantees that for buyers and sellers during the deal or for ownership paint or something? Because you have mentioned that yes, there is a lot of copyrights theft have been during these deals and during this business.
I'm afraid I don't get that question fully.
What guarantees for buyers and
Oh, I
sellers?
see.
Yes.
So that is a complicated beast because we can only guarantee what we can influence. And as you know, when you sell an NFT, you actually can only guarantee everything around the NFT, but not the artwork that is certified by the NFT, because the let's call it the image creating information sits on a third-party platform we can't influence. So therefore, essentially, when we pin it down to the legal side of a deal, we are selling you an NFT, and that NFT proves the ownership of that artwork, but we are not selling you the artwork because we can't. We can sell you the ownership certificate.
Okay, so the owner of Salvador Monti is different, the real work is different than the owner of Salvador Monti NFT, right?
No, that is right, but this is not what you were asking. You were asking what is it we are selling and how can we, and what guarantee comes with it, what warranty comes with it. So when you buy from Christie's a Picasso and it's catalogued as Pablo Picasso, all on canvas, 1927, etc., then Christie's guarantees you for 5 years that this is a Picasso work. And if 2 years later Picasso's granddaughter says, oh, by the way, I did that when I was in school, it's not by my grandfather, it has to be taken out of the catalogue raisonné, then Christie's will reimburse you because we made a mistake. So that's one thing, that's the canvas. When we now move that question to NFT, the NFT certified work is on a third-party platform, depending on where the artist has placed it. And that's a place we can't influence, whilst the canvas we have in our warehouse. So you can't do anything with it. You control that, and we can go to the catalogue raisonné and can say, is that by Picasso or whoever did it, or claim to have done it. So with the NFT, we sell you the NFT, and that's not only us. That's the whole market systems. We'll sell you the NFT, and all the warranties we are giving, or the intermediary is giving, is connected to the NFT, but not to the work, because we can't, at least not by now, connected to the work itself, because the work is digital on a third-party platform. So that's the difference between selling an analog and selling a digital work. There is a second, there are many differences, but there's another important difference, and that's the taxing of it. So when you sell an artwork and say it comes from a private person, from a private collector, Christie's then gains a commission for the service of selling it. And that commission, since it is reflecting a service, triggers a VAT, and the VAT is triggered by the legislation where the auction takes place. So if it's a New York auction, it's a New York City tax. If it's a London auction, it is UK VAT. Not with an NFT. NFT is by the tax system considered a digital service, so the VAT on the commission for an NFT sale is to be paid in the legislation where the final bidder is located. That means for an auction house, you can only admit bidding from places where you have a VAT registration. So that means when you do an online sale, you can't open that to the whole world, but you can only open it to the legislations where you as an intermediary have a VAT registration, because otherwise it's not working out on the legal side or the tax side of the deal. Sorry, I got carried away.
That's interesting. What across. August? Okay.
I wanted to ask a question. Like, I've seen photographers moving into the NFT fields. So they are taking photographs and putting into as NFTs in the market. So do you see the photographers getting into more NFT field than the job they are actually doing as a photographers?
Well, I think the advantages of an NFT are the same no matter whether you're a painter or photographer, I would say. Maybe it's even more interesting for a photographer because they traditionally work in editions. So it's usually an edition of 6 as art photography. And so the NFT technology gives you a particularly safe, or being perceived as particularly safe, way of certifying that. But with photography, since you can sign the print on the back, it's usually signed on the backside and numbered. Most people are fine with that as a layer of security.
Thank you.
Yes.
For young artists, how can we know the experience of Christie to know for our work the Christie's opinion or something like that? Is there any opportunity to know Christie's opinion on for art that designed by a young creator artist, or that Christie's doesn't offer that?
Well, what we're offering is that whatever you want to sell, you can ask us whether we would sell it, whether there is a secondary market for it, and we give an opinion. Also, everything we offer is transparent. You go to our website, there's a register, you can have a search engine, and you can just find out whether we ever sold something by that artist, for example. And that's the best indication. So what has been sold through Christie's or our main competitors has actually reached the secondary market and is considered to be canonized, essentially.
Thank you.
Yes, Lalit. Yeah. Is there a question? Yes. Yes, Lalit. You.
Hi. First of all, I would like to thank you for being here for this wonderful speech and so much knowledge. And I would like to ask, like, as he said, like pictures are coming and the art is coming in this NFTs. How do you deal with the situation with duplication? If a well-known artist is creating an art and if somebody else commit that is created by me or something like this, how do you deal with this situation after the art is being sold or is not being sold yet?
Well, normally you have a catalog raisonné, so you check that, and they are nowadays online. But this is something that's part of your due diligence. So whether something is by a particular artist or not, you need to figure out before you sell it, because when you sell it, you give your warranty. So if you make a mistake, you have to pay for that. So my colleagues are very diligent in making sure that they do everything to check that what we offer as being by the artist X, Y, and Z is indeed by this artist. Every now and then something happens and there is a forgery, or there is a dispute between artists, especially when artists have collaborated. That can happen, but it's a rare exception. So it's part of the due diligence process before the sale, not after.
Okay, so how do you deal with this? Do you have any tool like AI, artificial intelligence, or the people you're like?
Not really. It's very straightforward. You go to the artist's register and you check it. It's this is the least complicated thing, I have to say. Speaking about, I would assume maybe 85–90% of the market where you do have a catalog raisonné, where the artists or their studios or their estates have put together a compendium of their works they claim to be by them. So that's very easy. It also means, on the opposite, when someone comes to you and says, this is a Picasso, but it has been with my grandmother for the past 80 years, then it has to be accepted by the estate. And if the estate doesn't accept it, because they then check with their own data and documentation, then it can't be sold as a Picasso, or Christie's wouldn't sell it as a Picasso. So, but this is all done before you offer it, because once it's sold, your warranty is attached to it, and you're legally bound.
Okay, so in that case, you as an intermediate, you have to pay it, or artists have to pay this money?
No, it's not about the artist. It's about our services not having been done in a diligent way. So it's our fault, and we have to pay for that. It's not about the artist, because you can't make an artist pay for something he or she hasn't created.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much.
Maria? Yeah, yes, Maria. Okay.
Go ahead. No, okay. Thanks. So I've been thinking about this a lot, and if I have a piece of art, of analog art, no, it is also because it has another use or purpose for me, which is, for instance, it decorates my wall, it decorates my home. Do you think that maybe after this hype of NFTs that we are seeing, it might be that we end up not finding any other value to digital art through NFTs other than the fact of owning the NFT per se? Or maybe that it decorates, I don't know, my Instagram, but right now I cannot really see any other value to this piece than the NFT itself.
It does everything to you an analog work does, everything. It can decorate. You have a projection, you have a large screen. Most people live in living rooms with large screens anyway. They just do different things with these screens, but you can use it to show your NFT work. You can send it to your mother-in-law to impress her. You can show it on your mobile phone. You can, as you say, show it on your Instagram account. You can give your friends access to your wallet so they can see what you've collected. You can speculate. You can invest. You can exchange with friends and other collectors. You get access to a certain social group and to a tech crowd by collecting. It's all the same.
Yes, and at the same time, for instance, before the use of NFTs, we were not showing pieces of digital art in our screens in our houses, no. So if we would start doing this now,
no, you know what my gut feeling is. The vast majority of people who now buy NFT-based digital works didn't buy digital works before.
Exactly.
No, what I'm saying is, it's not that you bought all these digital works in the past decade and didn't show them, and now that NFT is in the world, you all of a sudden kind of do it. You buy them now because the system has convinced you that's a safe way of buying art, that's an interesting way of creating art, etc. So these are all newcomers to the party. So they are totally easy about showing it. I don't think there is a traditional digital art collector base that hasn't shown their work. They've shown it on screens or with projections. I've seen that.
Maria, you've used this word called as the hype of the NFTs, and thereby a few questions also coming down online, where Shazia and Arban have asked a question stating that can I make money in NFTs such as the cryptocurrencies? And similarly, Shazia has asked a question stating that I'm interested to know about the futuristic visions of the NFTs in mind. So the idea behind this is that there's a very huge hype about NFTs which is created. How do you see this as your experience in the industry, and how do you see this as the NFTs?
Well, can you make money with trading NFT? Yes and no. If you are, it's like shares. In case you buy the right things, and you understand the markets of tomorrow, and you have the right selection, yes, of course you can make money with that. Normally it's a mixed calculation. So some of your works will go up in value, others will go down, and the question is, what's the sum of that? But the same, it's with every speculative interest. You need to understand what you're doing, and the better you understand kind of a general development, the better you can judge the individual offer.
So I think that means there are going to be a lot of wolves of the Wall Street, which is going to increase with the NFTs coming inside. But then do you feel that there has to be a regulation also? There is a regulation, or there will be a regulation in this industry? How is this?
Well, I think the interest of kind of of civic society comes from the tax side. Well, comes ex post, obviously, and this is tax driven, I would think, and this is what we already see, that in some legislations crypto assets are taxed. Then on the other hand, in many legislations there is no wealth tax, including Germany, for example. So the question is, what does it mean for an inheritance tax, for example? But I think the regulations come through the tax door predominantly. Apart from that, what we currently see with the Ukrainian war and the Russian situation is that when some societies put sanctions on individuals and their assets, and they are seizing their whatever super yachts on the Turkish coast.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be kind of crypto assets be part of that? So that might be a second step where legislation follows suit.
We can take one question and then yes, please.
So this is mostly related to analog art. So does Christie have their own forensic team to determine the authenticity of any product? Like somebody says this is a Picasso, so does Christie have their own team of forensics to determine whether it is that one? Because sometimes forgery is also there apart, like not just for like paintings, but for...
Answer is yes.
Okay.
Answer
So
is yes. We do, yeah. It's in New York. This team is in New York.
Yes, I think it's been a very interesting discussion. If there are any questions, we can put it forward. And if not, I think we can just end this up with one last question from my side that I would like to know about is that during the auctions, what do you think is that influences the auction? Is it the domino effect that's created across that of the emotions that everybody is bidding more, so this is an art that might have a higher value, or is there a rationale behind the art that this art has to possess so much of a threshold value? So what is that? Is it the rational way that's actually bidding it, or is it the emotional impact which is creating a kind of a domino effect?
I think you have both, and it depends on the character of the bidder. So some are really kind of cool-blooded about it, and they look at something and they think, well, it might be worth X and I can spend Y, and then they set their personal target and don't step higher, don't bid higher. But then there are also people who fall in love with something and have the money and can just spend and just go up. And others actually are reconfirmed in their choices by competition in the bidding. So when they want something and many others want it too, that's reconfirming their choice. And so they bid higher. So it's a mix.
Thank you, Dr. Dirk. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise.
And it's been a wonderful session.
Thank you.
So I think we may just conclude the session, and as we just conclude the session, I should thank Dr. Dirk Boll for joining us. It's been a wonderful session. We had a very interactive discussion on the luxury industry. There were more questions that came on the non-fungible tokens, which is entirely new to the industry. And with this, we thank you for joining us. You just flew from London and you've joined us for the session. We're very much thankful for this interaction which has happened down. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.